So I'm going to show you how to pipe this really pretty Scabiosa flower. Got these random little petals flying here, there and everywhere, leaves to cover any gaps, and these gorgeous little details in the centre, these tiny little flowers just sprouting through. The colours I've used for this, I've added a little bit of whitener to the buttercream, just a little bit, and for the green I've used Pro Gel olive green. The piping tips I'm going to use for the petals is a 124K, so it's a long thin piping tip, and you've got the long end at the bottom, and then the shorter end is what forms the edges of these petals here. And then for the tiny little flowers in the centre, this is a 57R piping tip. I think it's a PME. It's just this tiny little curve that gives you these nice little delicate petals. And then for the green, I've snipped off about a centimetre or so off the end of a piping bag with some green in it. And I'm also going to use for this a 352 leaf tip and a number 4 round piping tip. You can load up 3 separate bags if you want to, but I'm doing quite a bit of piping today, so I've got my green in this bag, and I've got a spare bag here that I can swap my tips about with, so I've only got to use these 2 bags for all of the green that I want to do today. So I've crumb coated my cupcake with the white buttercream. Have a piece of paper towel handy, and I'm going to take up the 124K. So you want to push all your buttercream down to the bottom and make sure your bag's nice and tight. And you want the long end of the piping tip as your base, so that's this shorter edge forms the edges of the petals. So I'm going to put around 5 different sections of petals in here. Nobody's going to count them, so if you end up doing 6, it doesn't matter. I'm going to start at the edge, and I've got my piping tip sort of parallel to the cupcake here, and I'm going to make a little round, another little round. Then I'm going to come up over the edge of the cupcake case a little bit, a round and another round. So that's the shape of my petal. I'm going to turn the cupcake, leave a little gap, and then I'm going to do exactly the same thing again. So I'm going to come up, up, take the centre one out a little bit, and then up and down like that. So you've got this random petal poking out over the top of the cupcake. Not too far over, but enough to make a difference. Turn the cake, leave a little gap. I'm going to do the same thing again. So make a curve, little random one, make a curve. Turn the cake, leave a little gap. Up, up, out a bit, up, up. And then the last one, you'll have to have a smaller gap in between, doesn't matter. Go up, up, out, up, up. So that's the rough shape of the petals that I'm making. Now at this point, I like to put in the leaves, because then the petals will overlap the leaves and they're hiding underneath, they're just poking through. So I'm going to put them on now. So I'm going to put my 352 leaf tip on. Make sure your bag's nice and tight and that you've got the point facing where you want your leaf to be. Buttercream's going to ooze out the sides, so make sure you've got the angle of that tip right. Now in between these gaps, I'm just going to pull a little leaf outwards. So I'm just going to touch the cupcake, make a leaf, stop and come off. And I'm going to go round, just pop in a little leaf between each gap, and then they're done. Okay. And now I'll take up the 124K again. Clean off your piping tip if you've got any buttercream on there. Make sure your bag's nice and tight and that you've got the angle of your tip right, so you want that long bit at the bottom. I'm going to come in and go over these petals exactly the same way. I'm going to widen them a little bit so that I cover the base of the leaf. So over the top, exactly the same thing again. Come up, up, out with a random one, and back down. Again, turn the cake, come up, up, out, up, up. Turn the cake. And I'm sort of making a little bit of a wiggle as I do them. Not too much. So obviously your piping tip's coming up a little bit now because you've already got buttercream on the cupcake. So follow the angle of what you've got on the cupcake. If you watch, I'm sort of squiggling a little bit as I pipe so that the petals have got a little bit of a ruffle in them. Come round again. Now I'm just going to put a little petal randomly here and there. So there's not really any rhyme or reason. I'm just doing it to fill in any gaps to create a bit more texture. So they're a little petal, touching down, squeezing, come back down and come off. Just making little random ones just to cover any of those leaf gaps and to create a little bit of texture. So that's the petals on. Now to create the center, I'm just going to use this bag that I've snipped a bit of the end off just to make a mound in the center. It's only small. I'm just going to touch down in the middle, squeeze until I fill the gap, stop and come off. And now I'm going to add some detail onto that. So I'm going to use the number 4 round. Make sure your bag's nice and tight. And I'm just going to cover this center green with little tiny dots. So I'm going to touch down, squeeze, stop, come off. And I'm going to cover the whole thing. Turn the cake as you go so that your piping hand is always comfortable. And if you find it difficult to hold the cake and pipe these tiny little details like this, you can always set it down on the table and steady your wrist with your other hand and come in and do exactly the same thing. So you're just touching down, squeeze a little dot, stop and come off, and then always turn your cake so that your piping hand is in the right place. Okay, so that's an option if you struggle to hold the cake and pipe. For these tiny little details, I like to have my buttercream on the softer side, so it's not difficult to squeeze out. There's a lot of tiny little squeezes in here, and if you've got very firm buttercream, that's when it starts to really make your hand ache. those muscles are really working to make the tiny little squeezes. So if you have it softer, you haven't got to squeeze as hard and it won't ache as much. There's nothing worse than getting achy hands from piping when you're enjoying it. So that's my centre covered with the little dots. And now I'm going to use the 57 to create some tiny little flowers in the centre. So make sure your bag's nice and tight. It's got a slight crescent shape, the tip, so you always want the crescent shape sort of in the middle so it's facing you. And then, let's just clean off the tip there. I'm going to make these little flowers by touching down on the edge of these little green dots. Squeeze, lift, stop, come off. And then turn the cake. I'm going to put one next to it. Turn the cake. Now I'm going to come in here again like this. And like that. So you've made a tiny little 4-petal flower. It's like a really minute little hydrangea flower. So it's the same technique, but tiny. And then I'll leave a gap. I'll put another one here. So you just turn your cake, touch, squeeze, lift, stop, come off. And then leave a gap and put another one in here. The gaps don't have to be even. They look realistic when they're not evenly spaced, so don't worry about spacing them. If you've got two closer together, it doesn't matter. I'll put another one in here. And then always flowers as they're growing will have little random bits and bobs growing. So I'm going to put one here. I'm going to make it smaller and I'll just do 3 little petals. So it looks like there's one growing, and maybe I'll put one here. And maybe there's one that's going to grow there. And that's it.